welcome to the Most Excellent 80s Movie Podcast on the Most Excellent Podcast Network. It's the podcast where a comedian, 2 filmmakers, and 3 podcasters, who are actually just 3 human beings, come together in a quest for justice to take another look at the 80s movies that we love, hate to love, and love to hate. And as always, you have 20 seconds to comply. This is episode 24, Robocop, a movie selection from 1987.
We get the best of both worlds. The fastest reflexes modern technology has to offer, onboard computer-assisted memory, and a lifetime of on-the-street law enforcement programming. It is my great pleasure to present to you Robocop. This guy's really good.
He's not a guy, he's a machine.
All Detroit has a cancer. Cancer is crime.
Let the woman go. You are under arrest.
You better back up, pal!
Your move, creep.
What are your prime directives?
You have the right to remain silent. You have the right to an attorney.
What is this shit?
Anything you say may be used against you.
He's a cyborg, you idiot. He recorded every word you said.
You're dead. We killed you.
His memory's admissible as evidence. You're gonna have to kill it. Get out of the car, for God's sake!
Robocop, the future of law enforcement.
That is straight up the Terminator soundtrack. It's interesting how they market this. You know, if you created a trailer for some of these movies like Robocop, you totally would rely on what people remember it for, you know, and the nostalgic kind of framing of what it is now. And they were really trying to sell it as like another Terminator, weren't they?
Yes, definitely.
Oh, hi, everyone.
That voice you're hearing is one filmmaker and one podcaster.
Hello.
And the one and only Nathan Blackwell.
Hi there. Is that Krissy Lenz over there?
It is.
It's a long table.
It is.
Krissy Lenz, comedian, NCT Phoenix.
Yes, and we have a guest today.
Yay!
Very exciting guest, podcaster and filmmaker. Tell us about yourself.
Why, hello there. I'm Andy Nelson. I have a podcast called The Next Reel Film Podcast. And we're also getting ready to kick off the Marvel Movie Minute, which is a minute-by-minute breakdown of the MCU films. So that's a job that we'll be doing for decades. And and then I'm a filmmaker here in the Valley. And so, but yeah, I love podcasting, and I love talking about great 80s movies.
Awesome.
So here I am.
So happy
I
to
feel like
have
I
you.
fit in here.
You do. One of us. And you had mentioned that you've seen Robocop roughly 1 million times.
Probably. This is a movie that I watched a lot when I was young. It's not a movie that I was allowed to watch in theaters.
Oh, yeah, not at all.
No, absolutely not. My mom was the sort of mom who we went to. She was always like, I think, more faux religious than she would ever admit. Mm-hmm. You know, she pulled us out of Ghostbusters in the middle because she thought it was too demonic.
Oh, that's a bummer.
But I don't think that she really cared that much. So it's just is really funny. But yeah, RoboCop is not a movie that I would have been allowed to watch. It was a friend of mine in junior high who actually told me about it, and we were he basically walked through the entire film for me. You know how kids would do.
Yeah.
You know, and he acted the whole thing out for me. So I knew the whole movie. And then I didn't want to see it for a while because it's one of those movies where I was talking to one of my teachers who at the time was like one of my favorite teachers. Mm-hmm. And they mocked it. And so I'm like, well, I can't express any interest in this movie now because you're one of my favorite teachers and I have to pretend I don't know anything about this movie. But then I finally saw it and I totally fell in love with it. But I think I was still affected by their opinion, and so I kept it to myself.
Oh,
I kept
yeah,
my
well-
love
Oh,
of it to
no.
myself.
I thought maybe you didn't want to see it because, like, your friend just described it so well it couldn't possibly live up to the explanation of it.
No, I mean, I really wanted to see it. He made me really want to see it. But I was also a kid of the 80s who loved special effects. And that was something that
And
I
hand
really...
explosions.
And hand explosions.
God.
And, oh my goodness, the extra footage of this just is so much gorier. There's just so much wonderful squib work and just horrible things. But I just loved watching that stuff as a kid. I totally ate up anything that had special effects in it.
This movie is interesting because it did, like, if you were growing up and you were a kid when this came out, it had that kind of like age gate to where it was like something that appealed to kids. It was like a robot cop, but yet it was a hard R, and so kids really wanted to, like, I remember. This was one of those first, like, rated R movies that I saw that, like, broke my brain.
At the same sleepover that
No, yeah, no. So I had this epic sleepover where we saw 3 of the movies that we covered, and we saw 3 movies. Saw Pee-wee's Big Adventure, we saw Nightmare on Elm Street, and we saw, and so this was not one of those. This was later down the line, but this was one of those ones to where you had maybe seen it once, but you knew you were kind of enacting and pretending to be Robocop as a kid. Maybe you hadn't even seen the movie, but you thought Robocop was cool.
Yeah.
But there was that thing, because it's such a hard R movie, you couldn't express interest to your parents or to some friends that you're into it, but also, like, the movie studios knew that, and there was eventually, like, a Robocop cartoon, just kind of almost like it was kind of like Rambo too. Kids thought Rambo was awesome, but he's blowing people up with arrows, you know?
Yes.
Right, yeah. It was, and that's very much Paul Verhoeven, right? I mean, he seemed to be that sort of outside of Hollywood filmmaker who was coming in from Europe and making these fantastical movies that every kid wanted to see but couldn't because we're all too young. Like this, like Total Recall,
absolutely,
Starship Troopers. Everything that he does is like really R-rated.
Yeah, Starship Troopers is even kind of taken that even further to where all the characters are so fascist and so, like, unlikable, but they're doing things on the surface, if a kid doesn't understand, like, the subtext, like, are just terrible, you know?
I've never seen this movie before last night. I've never, ever seen it. And I'm glad someone told me that it is like a hard R, like super gory movie. Because that's, although all that I remember of it is the image of Robocop and like maybe seeing glimpses of it like on the TV while my parents were watching it. Or maybe I remember the cartoon, but I have most definitely never sat down and watched this movie. This movie is insane, you guys. I mean, it's really good, but it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, one of the great things about this movie is the way that it opens. It opens, we're watching, like, TV for, like, 5 minutes. We're watching future TV.
Yeah.
And you realize that, like, not only is this movie going to be about a Robocop, but its society is on the menu. Like, we're pure up going to be lampooning society and, like, the future and news media and just, like, you know, predictions of where the world is going to go.
But I do love the idea that, like, even in the future, every news show has to have the same sort of music. It has to be like ding 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 ding. That's how you know it's news.
And the fantastic newscasters who are smiling through everything.
And it zooms
so
right in on their faces, which is like, yeah, this movie I'm watching going, oh my God, why aren't people, like, talking about this movie more? It's like hitting the nail on the head of so many things, or it's like,
oh, it's so good.
just their plastered smiles. And it's, I think the lady from Entertainment Tonight.
Right. Yeah, Lisa Gibbons.
Yes.
It's awesome.
And they're just like all the same face and the same tone, no matter what they're talking about or how horrible it is.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it the peace platform inadvertently killed
Yes.
130 people, including 2 ex-presidents?
Yeah.
Right?
Almost as if they're robots. What? There's layers. I don't know.
Paul Verhoeven loves throwing in social commentary any chance he gets with his
Yeah.
projects, and it's fun even in a film like this. That I probably never paid attention to that stuff. Like you were just saying with
as a
Starship
kid, it's
Troopers. It's just like, oh, it's funny. It's a stop motion dinosaur tearing apart the city, and then surprised by this car. It's just he has so much fun mocking all these little things. Or Nukem, the best family board game ever.
And that's the thing.
Oh my god, I loved that moment. It was so good. Why isn't that like clip of that video being shared by everybody? I've never seen it. It's awesome.
And it's interesting because it's not like he is lampooning the rich. It's like everyone is fair game.
Everyone's terrible.
Everyone's terrible. It's like the common man loves the stupidest show. I'd buy that for $1, and then everyone's like, "Oh my god, that's so
He
good."
would buy that.
It's almost kind of like a hint of like Idiocracy to where
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah,
For sure. It was really good, but I don't know. Like that part to me was maybe a little bit hard to swallow.
It was not It was probably not the movie you thought it was going to be.
It was definitely not the movie I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to basically be the Terminator.
Yeah,
but he's a cop.
Interesting.
Yeah, and it's not that. There's way more arms being blown off with shotguns. Way more of the dad from that 70s show really not being a cool guy.
That was my first experience with Kurtwood Smith, is this character in this film. And watching the stuff that he did, I mean, I always just loved him. He's got some great lines. He's just so sadistic and awful. He's brilliant at it. And then he went from that to being the dad in Dead Poets Society.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, no wonder you made your kid kill yourself because you're a terrible person. And then he ended up the dad on that 70s show. And I'm like, well, there's a complete turn. Such an interesting career for that guy. But I just love watching him.
And he's always looked the same. Like he hasn't aged a day from then to
it's
now.
like Patrick Stewart.
Yeah.
Right.
Like he just always looked 60. So I guess that works out nice for him. And then the guy who plays Miguel Ferrer.
Yeah. George Clooney's cousin.
No, really?
Yes.
He's just always bad guy. Like, do you think like down in his heart he just like really just wants to be the lead in a romantic comedy?
Probably.
Or Wanted.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
R.I.P.
Yeah. And he's so good. But
he was killed in this movie. He committed to the part.
That was it.
Man.
Well, I remember
that
him
made his career
most clearly from the movie Blank Check. Do you guys remember that movie?
I never saw that one.
It's a terrible 90s kids movie where like essentially he gives a kid a blank check for running over his bike in the middle of committing a crime, and the kid writes a check for $1 million, and then through a hilarious series of misunderstandings the kid gets $1 million because of the whole crime drug deal. Anyway, I recommend that movie if you like his work. But back to this movie, I wrote down so much dialogue. It's so good.
Well, I'm guessing that
Bitches,
you've probably heard lines from this. I mean, not having ever seen the movie, you probably go, "Oh, that's where this line was from."
That's where this is from.
Yeah.
Every line was magical. Cops don't like me, and I don't like cops. Like so many lines where it's like somebody wrote that down and then high-fived. That's life in the big city. I love the scene too, like which that line is from, where he's talking shit in the bathroom. You have to swipe a credit card to get into.
It's the executive washroom. It's not just for anybody.
Well, does it cost something to get in there, or you just have to prove that you have a credit card?
I don't think it's their credit card. I think it's their
key card.
Key card.
Oh, yeah. I thought it looked exactly like an American Express gold card.
It might have, and that might have been on purposeful by Verhoeven.
Oh, okay. Maybe I just misunderstood. But I like the idea that it would cost you like $50 to pee in the nice bathroom, and then he just totally gets busted not checking for feet.
No.
Something that we've all done.
Yeah, gotta check for feet.
That's a great scene. Ronnie Cox is such a great, just a scene-chewing villain.
Oh yeah, he's dialed all the way up on this one.
Mm-hmm. It must have been so much fun,
right,
to be in this movie. Because you imagine just being like, "That's good," but I think more. I think you could just a little more. 10% more.
Turn it up to 11.
Yeah. Start there. Start there, and then we'll keep it going up. Because everybody's evil, except
Peter Weller.
and his lady partner.
Anne? Is that one? Officer Ann Lewis.
Yes.
Lady partner.
I like just calling her lady partner. Yeah.
Lady partner.
Lady partner. They're the only two nice people in this entire universe. Well, presumably his family.
Peter Weller is such an interesting choice for this role. Like, when you first see him, he seems like so wide-eyed and so, like, immediately kind.
Like, how did he grow up in this world?
Uh-huh. Well, obviously he lives in the suburbs. Did you see his house?
Right. He came from because they said they transferred people. Like, he was transferred here. He's starting at this new precinct, and it's like the ghetto where he has to go to. So yeah, he clearly came from the swanky precinct where he didn't have to do anything difficult.
But he comes in like so wide-eyed, and like I feel like you immediately like him. He feels like the sensitive, like, you know, art kid who kind of comes in, but then it's such an interesting role to play, because being a huge portion of that movie is just his mouth.
Yeah, it's a lot of bottom of the face acting.
Yeah, there's three portions of this performance. There's human. And then there's Robocop, and then there's once he kind of gets blown away. It almost kind of like a Frankenstein's monster sequence where the cops turn on him because they're controlled by the bad guys. You know, they basically blow him apart, and then he's on the run with his partner, and then he's got his humanity back when his mask is off, and we see his eyes, and then that third performance is kind of the man trapped in the machine. Yeah. You know, like when he's got the visor on, even his voice is robotic and booming. And then once the mask is off, it's down to that kind of very low, sensitive human voice. Like it's...
Yeah, and it almost seemed like his robot voice had maybe like a catalog of things it could say, like almost catchphrases. Like it could say,
yeah, well, that's what I was wondering. It's like, it's like how many catchphrases? Like, what does he say? Your move, punk.
Your move, creep.
Yeah, your move, creep. And I was just wondering, it's like, how
Dead
many?
Or alive, you are
how
coming
many
with me?
Yes,
yeah.
Which he said when he was alive. So I couldn't tell. If, like,
at that point, he's totally running off of the programming. He's totally running off of whatever they gave him. Mm-hmm. So I like, how many one-liners did they give him? What was the scripting? How many times until it loops around again? You know?
Right. It's like a pull string on Woody.
Like I'm playing, Grand Theft Auto in the Old West, Red Dead Redemption 2 now.
Oh yes.
And there's so much variety in terms of what they do in terms of interactions. Like in the old, open world games, like you'd hear a lot of the same things over and over again. And they've written so many lines of dialogue in there, you just don't hear any repetition. It's nuts. But that just my brain was thinking. I was like, well, how many one-liners did they have to write for him?
Then program into his thing. Well, when you go see like the costume characters at Disneyland who are playing like a Darth Vader or Kylo Ren or Stormtrooper, that's what they have, is like a series of lines they can choose from, and you just don't get to interact with them long enough
until you see the loop.
Yep, exactly. But yeah, and I remember like the image that I remember from having like seen this tertiarily as a kid is that part where his hood is off, but he's half robot face, because it's so scary.
Yeah.
With great makeup effects too, because it really looks like half of his head has been removed and it's just like this robot head. That's something I think it was Rob Bottin who did the effects on this, right? Or the makeup effects. Was it Rob Bottin?
I don't know.
I should pull it up.
Say it authoritatively.
Yeah, sure. Let's say it was Rob Bottin.
I do know that how do you pronounce it? Basil Polidorus.
Basil Polidorus, yeah.
Polidorus, yeah. He did the soundtrack to Conan the Barbarian. So
right.
he did that awesome kind of like iconic Robocop theme, but it's so short. Like you want to get kind of pumped up by it, but it's not even like a full track. It's almost like a transition. Da 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 da. That kind of part. The one part that they kept in the Robocop remake It's like, oh, this is exciting. They're reusing that theme. But it's so short and quick. But yeah, he's an awesome composer.
He's done a lot of great scores. And this is, I think there's a couple tracks in this that just really highlight that main theme so well. Like when I think the when he goes into the, I don't know, it's like their cocaine factory or whatever it is.
They're putting it in like these little.
Tears that place up.
They look like genie bottles that they're putting cocaine in. It took me forever to figure out there was cocaine because I was like, why bother to put it in such a nice vessel?
Yeah,
and it also it doesn't do it very well because it's going up and it's filling and then they're dropping down and it's still spraying it everywhere. I'm like, no wonder there's cocaine all over the air.
Wasting so much cocaine.
When
you guys.
when RoboCop comes in to bust them. There's so much of that, like, in the air.
Just cocaine everywhere.
Yeah.
What would happen, like, so RoboCop comes in, he kicks the door down, he, like, blows up some of that stuff, and suddenly, like, it's all misty with cocaine, and then everyone is trying to get through the scene, but they're so high.
Why did we use real cocaine?
Even RoboCop is...
Too much cocaine, you guys. I was not programmed. I'm sorry, but I totally derailed what you were saying about the cocaine factory.
Oh, no, I was just saying, but the track there, like the music, when Basil Polidoris wrote the score for that particular scene, I don't know, I just feel like that's really propulsive. It's got just that kind of great, and it almost sounds like a hammer and anvil sort of clang, 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 which works so well for the whole concept of RoboCop. It's just a really nice theme.
To me, there was a lot of really disturbing ideas and imagery.
Yeah, not even just like violence, but just like imagery and concepts.
Especially like when he's been killed, but not quite killed, but you see from his point of view as they're robocopping him, and just the dispassionate way that they talk about him, like the New Year's Eve party that they're having, and they're like kissing him and throwing stuff at him. That made me like cringe and tense up. It just was so creepy and so disturbing, and the way that they shot it made you feel so trapped and like powerless.
Yeah. It's almost kind of like he's in a coma.
Yeah.
And all the doctors are talking about him, and he's seeing like months or like a year just kind of go by, and people are standing over him. It's like, why does he still have that arm? We agreed that we'd remove the arm. We were able to save it. No, remove the arm. We could do whatever we want.
Lose the arm.
Yeah.
It's horrifying to think about things like that. Like here he is watching that. Now, granted, they, quote, wipe his memory, so he's not remembering any of the stuff that we're now privy to, but still, it's just like...
That never works like they say it's going to work.
Exactly. Well, clearly, he still remembered stuff from his life beforehand, so obviously he still has...
With, like, very little trigger. It's like his first day out there on the job, and he's like, oh, I've run into the guy who killed me.
Right.
What a small world.
It's interesting. So it's like Paul Verhoeven, it feels like his storytelling style, his style of entertainment is as much emotional reaction as possible. And usually that means something that's disturbing.
Yeah.
You know, like throughout, like conflict, but usually disturbing conflict, unsettling conflict. That's his kind of his style of storytelling. Like everything is meant to kind of elicit some sort of emotional reaction. And it's usually never like, yay, excitement, we're fighting kind of thing, like most like action movies do. You know, it's either some kind of like someone being doused with toxic ooze, getting run over and falling into pieces.
That was so gross.
You know, just like even like the little moment of what does he eat, and then they've got this thing that's like squirting
the mush.
Yeah, the mush, which is meant to. I mean, it looks. They say, oh, it tastes just like baby food, but when they first do it, it's supposed to elicit a gross reaction, like it's poop coming out of like a Play-Doh grinder, you know, and that's what this movie is like. It's always doing something unsettling and weird and kind of bringing that emotional reaction up.
Yeah, it's never giving you a hug.
No.
It's also always shaking you and slapping you in the face to make sure that you are awake. Just top to bottom. I think my shoulders were tense the entire time I was watching this movie. And it's very scary. Even like that's like the visual reaction to the grossness of the goo. And then they play it for a joke later when she's like, I got you something to eat. And she's got baby food. I thought that was pretty cool. And then the scary feeling of like he's trapped inside his own body. But then even later, the concepts that they're just tossing out, like, oh, well, of course we programmed you so that you can't arrest anyone who made you.
Yeah, they initially bring up that very sort of like secretive like directive 4. Like, he's got his top 3 directives, and they have a mysterious directive that is introduced very early on.
Right, because it's classified. We don't know what it is. And it's interesting that even in his own field of vision, it is introduced like with much dramatic effect, right? Because we see the first 3 directives pop up very quickly, and then there's a nice pause, and then directive 4, classified, just to kind of get us all excited about what could this directive be. Yeah. It's very mysterious, and it's interesting, and it actually reminded me a lot of Isaac Asimov's the rules of robotics that he kind of came up with about kind of the rules that robots would have to have about not harming your master and things like that. And it felt very much like that was something that they were patterning these directives after, which I thought was actually pretty interesting because it makes sense to kind of incorporate rules like that into this kind of robot human that they're creating.
And of course they would be like, well, you can't get mad at me.
Right.
I'm allowed to do whatever I want.
And there's also it's interesting because they're constantly saying, oh, his mind is wiped. He doesn't remember everything. But the whole dramatic premise is based off of when is he going to remember?
Yeah.
And
because he's gonna.
So so for a lot of that movie, you're waiting for when is that shoe going to drop? When is it all going to break down? Because he's unraveling a mystery that we already have the answers to. We already know all the other stuff that he doesn't know.
And it is, as you pointed out already, it's interesting that it's pretty much his first day on the job.
Yeah.
When all of this starts happening.
He's been there like 15 minutes and he stopped 4 crimes and he's like...
Yeah, hardly anything. I mean, technically, I guess some more time has passed because there's enough time for the news to follow him and
for him to high five little kids.
Right, the great little moment where he turns on the kids and they're all like jumping back. And
I like the idea that he legitimately wasn't programmed to know what a kid is. Yeah. So he's like freaked out.
Why is this one smaller than the others?
Right.
That reminded me of, or I guess it reminded me of the second Avengers movie. Or I guess even the most recent Justice League movie, like, I think there are a lot of those moments that Joss Whedon likes to throw into his stuff where it's like the scary monster interacting with little kids and they're like excited by
I feel like there's like a Frankenstein element to Robocop, you know?
Right, it really is.
I mean, when the SWAT team has surrounded him and he's getting shot at and he's not falling apart, he's just kind of like, shielding his face. You feel terrible for him. He's like this kid, and then these are his quote friends who have turned on him. Just kill him, we have our orders. And he's just so helpless. He's just running away. I have no more friends.
Well, it's that innocence of children, right? And they very much see that kind of element of him where he doesn't seem scary. And I mean, I guess that does work well in the Frankenstein concept, and I think it fits very aptly with this. This is this guy who has been mutilated and deformed by OCP, and here he is now stuck living this mangled existence with fragments of memories, and it works really interestingly. And again, going back to that. There's a lot more to unpack in this film than just this crazy 80s, action movie, because there are plenty of those too.
And they're all great.
Right.
But yeah, no, this one is just like there's so much. There's so many layers.
We haven't
so
even
many
talked
questions. I have so many questions.
We haven't even talked about Ed 209.
We haven't.
The insane robot. There's so many classic action moments in this movie, or just movie moments.
Yes.
Yeah, that moment when Ed 209 first is introduced and takes that guy out in the office is just bananas.
It shoots him 100 times.
Oh yeah, easily in the top 5 of most squibbed live humans ever.
How did they even get all those
Those are
onto
squibs
him.
on top of squibs.
Oh my God.
That
Well,
layer.
so there's a
Nuts.
if you want to know more, there's a podcast called "I Was There Too," where he actually interviews that guy.
Yes, I do want to know more,
Nice.
and I will listen to that. Yes.
Yeah,
How many
and I
squib
think
hits,
there was
right.
they even brought him back to get more squibbed for more shots, like
Holy
after
cow.
he left. Yeah.
That's just bananas. But going back to Ed 209, what I love about that is this is still this world where we have stop motion animation, and I love seeing kind of that kind of staccato effect of Ed 209 as it moves around, and it has this really interesting, authentic feel of that presence of this robotic movement that I have just always loved. It's so neat. And even when they have the real Ed 209 standing there, I mean, it's an amazing presence. And it really is kind of just this horrifying, like, half transformer looking robot that
With like growls of a tiger. And,
right.
Which I loved. I loved that it growled. Like, some engineer was like, well, let's make it growl. Then people know.
Until it starts squealing when it falls
like
on
a
its
pig.
back.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when it falls, that's great.
There's just like one guy who's like, they hired me to do sound. They didn't give me a lot of instructions. So I
Just
just had fun with it. If he spins really fast, it goes wee, but no one's ever spun it really fast.
But yeah, it's the policing robot with missiles, multiple missiles.
Yeah. Well, and like even Robocop is so overpowered that he can like straight up punch through a wall and drag someone back through it. But like when he's out cruising around preventing crime, what I kept asking was like, where he's saving like innocent good people, but why are these good people hanging out around here? Like, how is there possibly a mom and pop shop still in this world?
Why is this businesswoman running around in the dark streets of old Detroit?
In a nice dress,
Right.
like
She clearly does not fit in this world. Maybe she's
No.
down there buying drugs. Who knows?
Maybe she's buying drugs for a friend.
for a friend, for a potluck she was going to later. And like even the people in the mayor's office that are being held hostage, like I think we're meant to think that they're good people, but probably they're not. The mayor of this town is probably not a nice
Oh yeah,
man.
for sure.
Well, if he's putting people to work with him, like the guy who takes them hostage, then definitely he's making some bad decisions. So he probably
Not
probably
great.
isn't that great to begin with.
I loved that scene though. Like I loved the character who was holding them all hostage was so fun, and he just said the craziest things. Like I wrote it down. He said, "When people jerk me off, I kill them," and I'm like, really? Probably not every time.
He's serious.
Yeah.
He's serious, and he wants that 6,000 SUX.
Yes. With cruise control.
It's the movie was one of those ones where they still are creating this cool world with like matte paintings and everything, where I don't think I ever knew this until I was looking into it for this show, where they actually filmed this down in Dallas, I think. And I always assumed that they filmed it in LA or maybe actually in Detroit, but I didn't know they filmed it in Dallas. And then you look at some of the behind the scenes and how they do stuff, and just like matte paintings in the day where they actually would like have the piece of glass in front of the camera to like extend these buildings, and the way that they made the OCP skyscraper. And it's just, it's a simple little piece of glass in front of the camera, but I just love camera tricks like that. And now it's digital and you can do so many things with digital technology these days to create really amazing worlds. But going back to kind of my love for film, falling in love with these types of movies, it was just all those cool effects that they were doing to make these amazing worlds, because it's just so neat what they were pulling off here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a practical effect or one of the things that we talk about when we talk about whether or not the movie holds up is like, the effects don't hold up if you were comparing them to if we made this movie today, which they did. Did you either of you see it? The newer?
The new one?
The new one? Yeah, I saw it.
Michael,
I did
you
see
saw
it.
it?
Yeah.
Was it all
Yeah, it's all digital.
So I
Or
guess
at least so I remember. Honestly, it's one of those movies that you see once and then it just doesn't stick to you.
you just
it
deleted
just-
it immediately.
Yeah, there was a couple of moments. There's one super memorable, effective moment in it, and then that's about it. It's when he's in disbelief that he's been turned into this machine, and so they present him with like a mirror, and they actually remove every single metal part of him and show him all the only parts of humans that he's got left, and it's just a couple of organs and like half of an arm, and then his neck and his head with stuff from, they sort of like pull him apart like Darth Vader, and he's just freaking out at himself in a mirror, and that was super effective. But then it pretty much meant nothing. There was definitely something missing without like that social commentary, that kind of teeth that it has.
That seems like a weirdly done scene to just show, look what we can show the audience that we can do. Because otherwise, like, it seems like an awfully complicated thing to have to do to Robocop to just show, this is what's left of you. It's like, you're probably going to kill him if you do that. It just seems like a strange story choice to go through that.
You're definitely going to make him more okay with what's going on. Like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah,
thanks.
right.
Now I'm cool. Let's go stop some crime.
All right, let's do this.
Yeah. But I think it, the other way to look at it holding up is like when you go back and watch this, it's still just such a treat and such a delight to look at the way that they shot those things, and it's worth watching this still.
Yeah. Well, when we talk about like, does the visual effects still hold up? Really, the question we're asking is, does the effect still create an effect? Like, do you still feel something from what's happening, or do you just see the seams? You just see the zipper in the costume. It's like where Robocop is pre-Robocop is getting blown apart. Like, that's gut wrenching.
Oh
like
my God.
Oh, yeah.
It's so
Explodey.
Yeah, explodey.
I was not expecting
Yeah,
that.
and then there's a physical effect that is an animatronic. So there's this shot where they show him right before he gets the bullet in the brain. They pan. They come around him. They come to the back, and then they shoot him, and his head blows up all in one shot. But that was an animatronic guy, kind of writhing in pain. That I caught just for a second as it comes around, so they could do that all as a oneer. Like, now there'd be a digital seam there, but they created an animatronic Peter Weller, the kind of writhing in pain with only one arm and all these holes in him, and then the camera came around so that they could blow the back of his brain out all in one shot.
Wow.
Well, and that's like the magic, and it is Rob Bottin who does all that stuff. I mean, just the stuff that he would pull off in the world of makeup effects is just mind-boggling. I mean, he did The Thing.
Oh, yeah.
Another great 80s movie that you guys need to talk about on this show at some point.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I can't believe we haven't done it yet. I think someone I asked to be a guest was like, well, obviously you've done The Thing. I'm like, actually,
We've done 24 episodes, okay? We had to get our...
we've done everything.
But, I mean, and he did Total Recall with Paul Verhoeven. And
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he did Seven. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff. He does that.
Oh, he did Seven?
Yeah, he does great, like, people effects. That,
Yeah.
And the stuff that he did, like that one shot you're talking about, I mean, it's just an amazing thing to pull off, where you actually have a full-scale Peter Weller puppet that is designed to writhe in pain and get its head blown off. I mean, it's amazing,
That
the stuff
poor
that he would put
puppet.
together.
What'd you do at work today, sweetie? Oh, well, I made a Peter Weller that's going to get blown up. Oh, that's cute. Good job, babe.
Yeah, and when you get like an amazing collaborator like that, like, they're suggesting things to the director, like, oh, it would be awesome if we could do this, and they're kind of coming in on the process, and like, they want to top themselves. They want to take on crazier things, and so that's when you get someone like a great collaborator like that, they're upping the game of what everyone can do.
Well, we talked about with the acting too, of them just being like, how much can I, like sort of rubbing their hands together, like, I'm going to do so much acting right now. Wait. And it's like they're doing that with the effects and everything else too. It used to be like, let's make people walk out of this going, what the hell did I just see?
Yeah,
right.
Everyone wants to up the game.
Yeah.
It's like with stuntmen. It was like, well, I've always wanted to do such and such kind of stunt, and then that's like how, Indiana Jones going under the truck coming in is because that stuntman failed to do. He screwed that up doing that in the Lone Ranger movie. He got run over.
Oh no!
But he wanted to get it right, and so he suggested that stunt for the movie, and then movie magic. And luckily, he didn't get run over by a truck.
Yeah, I definitely finished watching this movie and it's just like, what? How am I supposed to go to sleep now? I don't think I'll ever stop seeing some of those things. Like,
Right.
I'm glad I didn't see it as a kid because I think it would just be
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
for
it's-
sure.
what I see.
Like we say,
You can see why it's a hard R.
nightmare fuel.
Yeah,
Oh, absolutely. But it's such way more than any of the other movies that we watched.
Well, and what is so great about the effects is that the actors who are in the film clearly have been coached in a way where they know how to work with those effects. Like I buy into everything that Peter Weller is doing as an actor because he has been schooled, whether it's Rob Bottin or Paul Verhoeven or just himself, but how he's actually interacting with those different effects. And it makes me believe that all of this is really happening. And I think they all do that to just a wonderful degree here. And it just, again, going back to Peter Weller, I think his performance was brilliant anyway, because when he's walking around as Robocop, I mean, he's just got the perfect robotic walk. And I just remember as a kid, just so fascinated, even just the way he would like turn his head as he was walking, and he'd turn his head to kind of lead his body, and he'd turn his head to the left, and then his body would kind of shift to the left.
Yeah.
I was like, God, it's so brilliantly designed, all the movements and everything. It's really believable.
I kind of want to watch it again. Like, I'm definitely going to watch
What
it
you
again.
don't want to do is watch RoboCop 2 or 3. It's like one of those ones where there's a sharp drop off. That it's not as good as the others. Like it's not like.
Well, they gave
it's
up
not
on like social commentary, and they just went for let's just make an
different
effects,
director
an
and
effects action movie.
Yeah.
I'll probably watch them anyway. I'll let you know.
Well, there was this interesting
I'll
thing.
probably watch the newer one too,
Uh-huh.
just to see.
Well, there was also these weird. There was some like 3 TV movies done like in the mid 90s.
Of RoboCop?
Yeah, and I,
That is ringing faint bells, but not enough to have. But not enough.
no, but yeah. So like, legitimately, there's like 3 TV movies of RoboCop. I don't know. It's so foggy. Like, I don't think I've seen any of it since then. But I remember watching a little bit of it. I was like, yeah, this is better than RoboCop 2. So I could have been wrong. That was a while ago. But yeah, that'd be interesting. We haven't even mentioned TJ Laser.
We haven't mentioned. I have 6 pages of notes. We haven't mentioned any of it.
When they first, so that's the hero that Peter Weller's that pre-RoboCop son watches on TV. And when they first said it, I thought they said DJ Laser.
DJ Laser.
My son loves DJ Laser.
DJ Laser in the house. So on a scale of 1 completely exploding human being to 10.
Let's just go with the hands. How many exploding hands?
How many exploding hands out of 10 would you give this movie, Andy?
This has been a movie that I fell in love with right away as a kid, and I watch it again, and I still am just as in love with it. And I always ask myself as I'm watching this, is this just the 12-year-old me that's stuck in this mode and I can't get past it to see if there's anything wrong with it? But I'm never able to fully answer that question. So it still ends up being a 10 exploding hand movie. I just love everything about it.
It's a good answer.
That is a good answer for sure. What about you, Nathan?
I'm going to give it, this is high for me. I'm going to give it, I think, an 8.5 because it still definitely has a visceral, emotional reaction from me. And I mean, this is one of those movies that I had seen a bunch of times, but I probably haven't seen it like in 10 years. And so there was a lot of stuff that obviously I knew and remembered that was iconic. But in terms of like the moment to moment and the actual being like swept up in the story, like, yeah, it totally works for me.
I think I will agree and give it also an 8 because it definitely still works and holds up. And I never had a 12-year-old version of me that saw this. But I was watching the whole thing and my husband was coming in and out of the room and just being like, are you watching RoboCop? Like, wait for this thing. And like just sort of commenting on it. And I was like, well, you've seen this? How have you not? Why are we not? How is this not part of our everyday lives to discuss this?
This was not the reaction you had with The Last Starfighter.
It was not. I did not get excited about that at all. But I was just like, but this is relevant. We should be talking about this. Like, no privatization of our police force. Yeah, so I give it 8. Sound good to everybody?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yeah,
so,
you gotta leave 9 and 10 for like the things that you had you gotta leave a ceiling in there, like a buffer, right? Just in case like the Schindler lists come along. Yeah.
I put way too many things at my ceiling. They're all up there. I have a
Well,
lot stuck
that's
up
the
there.
thing. I've got to leave room for Big Trouble in Little China. I've got to leave room for Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Mm-hmm. And Bill and Ted's Excellent
and Bill
Adventure.
And Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Which is a 10. All right. So in 1987, this movie was number 16 at the box office. Number 1 was, of course, 3 Men and a Baby.
Oh, boy.
Hey.
Number 1 with a bullet. And then other movies that we have done from 1987. Overboard was number 45.
Oh, wow.
Which is Injustice.
Yes.
Is it?
It is. And
comparatively, I think it deserved to be 25.
I disagree. And Mannequin was number 27.
Oh, wow.
That was very popular at the time.
So those were movies that we have done from 1987.
I would say that number 16 is probably really high for an R-rated movie.
Yeah, I think that's probably why. Yeah,
it wasn't in the
and
top.
then plus it's like, how much did it made? It made like 58 million.
It made 53 million.
53 million.
Oh no, yes, 53.
Yeah, and I bet it came in. I remember just checking the listings. It came in pretty close to the ones right above it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then the top 3 were 3 Men and a Baby, Fatal Attraction, and Beverly Hills Cop 2.
Those are 2 R-rated movies.
Yeah. Beverly Hills Cop 2 for sure.
Yeah. But yeah, this is definitely like, again, a hard R. I mean, at this point, like, Beverly Hills Cop is a R-rated comedy, and it seemed like that was a little more successful than like people's hands being blown up.
Yeah.
Getting run over.
A Lethal Weapon is also on this list. It's number 9.
Gotcha.
And Predator is 12.
Wow. Okay.
So good year. Big
Good
year.
It is a great year. Lots of good stuff.
Take that, the 70s.
Yeah. Take that in 1986. No, I'm pretty sure 1986 was a great year. Yeah.
Screw you, 70s movie podcast.
We're going to rumble with those guys later.
Oh, that'll be fun to see.
Like Anchorman.
Yeah, exactly. I've got a trident. So what is your deep cut recommendation, Andy?
So I was deliberating over this for a little bit, trying to come up with something that seemed to fit. Mm-hmm. And I didn't go 80s, but I'm glad that you said that was okay to not stick with an 80s movie.
Mine's not either.
I went with the most recent adaptation of the Judge Dredd comics. That would be Dredd.
That is 100% mine too. Take it away. Keep going.
It's a fantastic movie that I don't think enough people saw.
So Dredd with
Carl Urban.
Yeah,
plays Judge Dredd.
This is the first double-handed deep recommendation.
That's right. And it thoroughly deserves it because it is a great movie, and it features another lead actor who only acts with his mouth for the duration of the film.
Carl Urban?
Yeah.
He has the mask on the whole time.
Anything.
If you're into to extremely violent law enforcers who only act with their mouths, this is the way to go.
Okay, can I ask a question though?
Yes.
Wait, Judge Dredd is a Sylvester Stallone?
So there's Judge Dredd and then there's Dredd.
Right. This is the second adaptation of the Judge Dredd comics.
And they're both,
the first one was they're both awful Sylvester Stallone.
And like Rob Schneider's in it.
And Rob Schneider.
Okay, as long as we're talking about sort of the
totally different movie.
Yeah.
So it's based off of a British comic.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and the cool thing about it is that it feels like a John Carpenter movie, like
in comic book form, or no?
No, the movie, like it's almost like shoot, I'm suddenly blanking. Assault on Precinct 13, to where they're all stuck in one location and they've got to survive the night, and it's very kind of like the hero doesn't give an F about you, and he's got, you know, he has like he's like the tough guy with a heart of gold who ultimately does care about people, but he's such a badass, and it's okay. Like if any of these bad guys cross him, he's just gonna blow them away. You know, he's kind of like a man's man, Clint Eastwood style hero that like the kind of stuff that like John Carpenter would do with, you know, Snake Plissken. So yeah, it's totally a great movie, and I concur.
And also is a hard R.
Yes.
Yeah. So, but he's also part human, part robot?
No, he's 100% human.
In a suit.
But the judges, these
He's just in a uniform.
police enforcers, they just wear this uniform, but it covers up their face up to their mouth. Very
Okay.
super.
Yeah, it's just a helmet.
Yeah.
It's just a helmet.
Okay. I'll check that out.
Yeah.
That sounds like fun.
Very worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't even think that would have lit up my radar at all as something that I would watch. But now I'm intrigued. All right. So I'm going to...
So no pressure, just on you.
No, you guys did a good recommendation. I'm going to do what I always do and do something that's completely bonkers and totally out of left field. And I'm going to recommend Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So you can see the other side of police officers and the other way to run a police precinct. It is on Hulu. You can watch the first 5 seasons on Hulu. It used to be on Fox. Fox canceled it, and like basically everyone just went insane on Twitter, and NBC bought it and brought it back. So it's starting up in January for its 6th season on NBC, and it is one of my favorite shows. If you like Parks and Rec, if you like The Good Place, if you like 30 Rock,
If you like RoboCop.
if you like RoboCop, this is your cup of tea. So like once you've watched RoboCop and you feel frightened and alone,
If you need to cleanse yourself as a human being.
and remember that some people are okay, turn on your Hulu and watch 2 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
That's a great reaction. If you need to cover yourself in the sheets.
Yes, because that's exactly what I did, and it worked.
You need your mom to bring you cocoa.
Yep. I was like, how am I going to sleep after having just watched RoboCop for the first time? I'm going to watch 2 episodes of Brooklyn Nine-Nine, and everything will be okay. But it's great, and more people should watch it. And
We're almost like doctors prescribing.
Yeah.
You know, like
That's, if you're feeling,
if you had a positive reaction or a negative reaction to RoboCop.
here's what you should do. Yeah, and I guess, I don't know, I also would just recommend, like, vote and hug each other so that we don't end up in a RoboCop
So we
feature.
don't have this feature, right?
Yeah. So where can we find the Next Reel podcast and all of the fun stuff that you are putting out there?
You can just go to thenextreel.com and you can find the links for all of our places all over the internet and all the shows. So everything's right there, and you know, look in your favorite podcatcher of choice for The Next Reel, and you will find us.
Yes.
Yes.
Do you have a favorite movie or episode that you've done so far?
I
didn't warn you that I was going to ask that. Yeah.
You know, we've done a lot of movies. I think we're into our 400s as far as the numbers of episodes. And we've covered my favorite movie, which is Brazil. So that was a fun one to talk about. We've talked about, we've had some really great series. And I would say, you know, a really fun episode to just listen to would probably be our 2001 episode, because I really love that movie. I think it's a masterwork. And Pete really hated that movie. and we
It's
do
the
a
E.T. of the Next Reel podcast.
We do a thing at the end of every episode where we use this website called Flickchart, and we rank our movie up against all the other movies that we've talked about on the show.
Oh, that's a great idea.
It's a really fun website. But when we're ranking and we don't agree on something, we do a rock, paper, scissors. And because it was like one of my favorites and one of his least favorites, we were rock, paper, scissoring every single one. And I had the worst streak of rock, paper, scissoring that I've ever had. And poor 2001 ended up so low on our list. It was just painful. It was a really painful thing to listen to. But still fun in its own way, I guess.
I really liked the Point Break episode because you guys really liked it and were saying all of the things that are perfect and wonderful about it. And I was like, finally.
That's a very fun movie.
It
It's
is.
a very fun movie.
So good. And where can everybody find you, Mr. Nathan?
Squishystudios.com. Also, Squishy Studios on the Facebooks and the Twitters. That's just my private handle, but also the on Facebook, Squishy Studios is the stuff we do with the short films and web series.
Awesome. And you can find me at National Comedy Theater or nctphoenix.com or the actual NCT Phoenix if you happen to be in the Valley and want to laugh at me in my face. You can do that.
But please keep only 5 feet away at the closest.
Yes. And you can find all of the most excellent 80s movies podcast stuff wherever the finest podcasts are sold and stored and distributed, but also at mostexcellentpod.com, Most Excellent Pod on Instagram, and Most Excellent 80s on Facebook. Thank you so much for listening. We truly appreciate it. Make sure to like and thumbs up and share and leave a comment for us. And, of course, as always, keep the Most Excellent 80s Movie Podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other. And
Your
you have
move.
20 seconds to comply.
There's too many quotes in this movie.
There's so many good ones.